So I have the honor of bringing up our first inductee tonight. His name is Rich Grawer. Coach, will you come on up? As Coach makes his way up, I mentioned, being with the other Billikens for 29 years, and it all started with Rich, because come up over on this chair on the far side. It's really because of Rich. One of my very first jobs in the business was broadcasting at that other Catholic school out in Ballas. And that's where Rich Grawer was the coach. And we had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. And Rich was winning games and instructing kids and doing the things that he does, and to invite some goofy, long-haired kid trying to do radio and do his games. He couldn't have been a more gracious person, and that's when I first learned about the kind of person Rich was. And then, 6-7 years later, I ended up back in St. Louis, and Rich and I were just talking about this a moment ago, and I told the folks at St. Louis U, and Rich knew I was back, and I was covering the team for Channel 11, and I just said, I love Rich, I love the game. If the job comes open, I want it. And I was just so lucky that the very next year, when Anthony Bonner came in, that was my first year, and Rich and I, we saw a lot of wins, and we had a whole lot of fun. One quick story, and then I'll let Rich talk. This will probably embarrass him, but it was because Rich is so humble, and he's different when he's coaching kids, because he's into it 100%. Now, some of you older folks may remember two players from those late 80s. One was one of the all-time greats, Anthony Bonner, and another one was a skinny kid from Oakville, Illinois, who early on folks literally wondered why Rich recruited him. Turned out, by the time he was done, he became a pretty good college basketball player. His name's Jeff Luchtefeld. And when he came in, he looked like a 6'5" Opie Taylor. Skinny, and he really just didn't look like he belonged. Early on, he was given a lesson from Anthony Bonner. Luchtefeld tried to drive the lane at practice over at West Pine Gym and ran into that brick wall that we know as Bonner. As he went sprawling on the floor, not doing anything that he was supposed to do, Rich comes screaming off the sideline, Luchtefeld, Luchtefeld, look at his body, look at your body, what are you doing? And Luchtefeld improved his body and never ran into Bonner again. So let's talk to Rich Grawer a little bit. Do you remember that at all?
I've forgotten a lot of that stuff.
I've forgotten a lot of that stuff. Hey, you know what? Because we don't have a ton of time, I wanted to kind of try and stir some memories a little bit. But anybody who looks at your resume and reads what was in the program, you've always been a winner. And as a player here, won a state championship. You go to Rockhurst and you win at Rockhurst. And everywhere you've been, you've won. And we've talked about it a lot. Sometimes you have to learn how to win. What instilled that in you, even as a teenager here at the U High?
Well, when I came to St. Louis U High, I went out for the freshman basketball team, and I got cut. They told me I wasn't good enough. From that point on, I felt I'd have to prove that I am good enough, and so I worked really hard. I made the sophomore team at St. Louis U High. Dick Volkmer was the coach, and the guys over Furman and you guys will remember, Volkmer came up to me and said, Rich, he asked me and another guy, he said, Tom and Rich, I can only keep one of you, and I'm going to keep Rich because he didn't make the freshman team. So I got on the sophomore team and never played, but I was determined, and by junior year, I made the varsity. My senior year, I made the varsity, and I was a starter, and we won the state championship. I think that lesson, kind of developed a work ethic in me that just carried over the rest of my life.
And you always taught, I know, that you don't have to be a star to be a contributor, and that everybody has a role to play, and not only accept it, but embrace it.
Yeah, well, that certainly applied to me here at St. Louis U High on the varsity. I think I averaged 4 or 5 points a game, but as Dick Wayner said, we had a star player named Hank Zahusky, and he was really good. And we defeated Bill Bradley in the state championship game by 1 point. I scored 2, so I like to tell people I'm responsible for that win.
The game winner.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, my experience here at St. Louis U High, and this is what makes this evening special for me, is St. Louis U High, beside being a student here, gave me my first teaching job right out of college, gave me my first coaching job, freshman basketball. They also allowed me to coach varsity baseball. I don't know if Kenny remembers, I coached varsity baseball here 1 year. And the development of, I guess, my Christianity, my whole family appreciation, all of that came from St. Louis U High. So being here in this building, inducted into the Hall of Fame in this building, is really meaningful.
Well, and talk about, too, and a quick aside, I've never met anyone that wasn't, not talking about basketball, talking about academics, that had Rich Grawer as a teacher, whatever high school it was. I'd never had one say that he wasn't the best teacher they ever had in any subject. Was it the Jesuit education that sort of made you want to do that and be an educator? Well,
I knew I wanted to be a teacher from the time I was here. I was very close with Father Phil Kellett, who Dick mentioned. Phil would, I think Phil thought I was going to be a Jesuit. That's why he liked me.
He was recruiting.
Yeah, because many a night after class and after basketball practice, he would invite me over to the Jesuit residence for dinner. And then we'd go down to the Billiken games. He was a big St. Louis University fan, and he would take me there. So the camaraderie I developed with Kellett and the other Jesuits and the other teachers, plus him taking me down to the Billiken games, developed that love. So all of that, I think, went into the development of making Rich Grawer who he was and who he is today.
And I want to get back to all the coaching and the great things you did there, but I don't want to overlook the academics, because that is the important thing about the U High academics, and being a teacher that received accolades. And did you have, you know, we talk about coaches with philosophies. Did you have a teaching philosophy that worked?
My basic philosophy in teaching was that if the kid didn't learn, it really wasn't his fault, it was my fault, because I didn't do a very good job teaching it. I was only, 8 years older, 7 years older, 6 years older than the guys I started teaching. Some of them were saying they were scared of me, and I said, I was scared of you guys too. I mean, I was 23 years old when I walked into that classroom with a bunch of really smart kids, and it scared the heck out of me.
I want to talk about a couple of quick things in your coaching career. Of course, state championships, and you know, you had Stepanovich, but then you also had Cusimano. So there's ups and downs. No, I'm kidding. But that's when I got to know you, and you had really developed a program and a way to do things. Talk about, though, and I've never heard you talk about this a lot, about the decision to leave a great program that you built at the Smet and then to go to Mizzou.
Well, you know, that was really a tough decision. Norm Stewart had asked me if I wanted to come up and be an assistant. I had great players, and not only great players at the Smet, but great players. Joe Castellano mentioned 15-0 freshman team.
Yeah.
Heck, if I wouldn't have had those good players, we wouldn't have been 15-0. So you have to have really good players to be a good coach. But, you know, I'd always thought, is there anything more than high school? And I thought at this point in my career, it was time to give it a chance. Norm Stewart gave me that opportunity. I had interviewed for the St. Louis University job the year before when I had Stepanovich. And I'll never forget, Ed McCauley was on the selection committee, and he basically asked me this question: if we hire you here at St. Louis University, will you bring Stepanovich with you? And stupidly, I said, no, he's going to make the decision and I'm not going to influence him. Had I said yes, who knows what would have happened, but I didn't say that. But they told me at that time that I didn't have experience, at the college level. So I went to Missouri, not really knowing I'd be there for 1 year, but in 1 year's time, then St. Louis University came back to me and said, you've got that year experience now. We've got an opening. Do you want the job?
And so was that decision any easier, tougher?
That was an easier decision than leaving to Smet, yeah. And nothing against Norm,
right.
Because Norm was great, and I still have a good relationship with Norm Stewart. And what makes it even funnier was, but Norm told me, when I told him I was going to take the job at St. Louis U, he said, Rich, they will make us enemies. And I said, who's they? And he said, the media. He said, they will pit you against me, St. Louis U against Missouri.
I hate the media.
Yeah. And that never really happened in my mind, but in Norm's mind, it did. And then in, some years, 15, 16 years later, Norm Stewart's sitting in my living room trying to recruit my son, Brian, to go to Missouri. So it's kind of an interesting circle that occurred.
We had so much fun. I call them when I'm talking to folks, I call them the Grawer years. Those years at SLUH, and where I was able to come back to St. Louis and land that job, and Bonner Gray Douglas we talk about. But you had so many great young men to go through there. The late Lee Winfield as an assistant coach, and Eddie Stewart, and it was really a great time. I wonder though, at the time, I wondered it then, and I still wonder it now. Did you allow yourself to enjoy it as it happened?
I always enjoyed the practices. I always enjoyed that. I did not like the recruiting. It's really hard because you have to go into a 17-year-old's home. You have to tell him how great he is, how wonderful he is, how he's God's gift of creation, how if he comes to St. Louis U, we'll take care of him. And a lot of that isn't true, but you have to. And so that makes recruiting really a dangerous business. But no, I did enjoy my stay at St. Louis. I've enjoyed my stay at every stop. 3 years at St. Louis U High was wonderful. Some fond memories, some great people that I still see. My 14 years at the Smet, 10 years at St. Louis U, 1 year at Mizzou, and even 14 years after I left the college ranks to go back to Clayton School District and be the athletic director was a great experience. Back with where I started, with the high school kids. So. And
before we let you go, your beautiful wife, Teresa, is here. You've always said the backbone of the family. You've got, I don't know how you keep, was it 16 grandchildren? 19? What is it?
19.
19.
Grandkids.
I need a scorecard. Everybody's doing
So do
great,
I.
and the family's great, correct?
Yeah, we're celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary this year.
How about that?
And just the advice I gave you, and I'll leave with this. I think it was 2 years ago, St. Louis U High asked myself and my son Kevin, who is now the principal at Maplewood High School, to come and speak to the father and sons at their banquet. And I was talking to Bob about this because years go by so fast. I said, fathers, you look at your sons and realize that they're going to be with you 18 years. 18 years, and that's nothing. Sons, you look at your fathers, you're going to be with them 18 years, and then you're gone. You're in college, you get a job, you get married, you're out on your own. So enjoy those 18 years. And that's what I have done with my kids.
Let's hear it for Rich Grawer.